Welcome to another episode of our video series of the critique of modern systems.
Hello. It's great to be here.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing excellently, thank you. I'm energized and ready to tackle what is perhaps one of the most radical ideas in psychology.
I think so too. The idea that action, not just analysis, is the real catalyst for change.
Exactly.
Because today we are diving into an approach that treats our challenges individual, societal, through direct, lived experience, the system we know as psychodrama. We're not just analyzing the system, we're trying to understand how to change it.
And that is a fundamental shift. I mean, we are leaving the couch and stepping onto the stage of life itself.
Yeah.
We want to understand how reality is discovered and really fundamentally transformed through immediate collective action.
Yeah.
And this is often guided by, well, by biological forces so primal they dictate our entire universe of choices, even if we are completely unaware of them.
So let's start at the foundation, because for many people, this whole system is misunderstood. It's often just categorized as group therapy.
Right. Which it is, but it's so much more.
It's far more than that. It's an educational method, a scientific system, and fundamentally a path to understanding life itself.
At its absolute core, psychodrama is simply this: the discovery of reality through action. Our founder, Moreno, he saw early on that traditional psychology, the analysis of the soul, it just wasn't enough when it was isolated in a clinical setting.
It's too passive.
Too passive. Psychodrama, the soul's active theater, had to be born alongside it.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to know the truth of a person, you don't listen to their words, you watch their feet.
It's a very physical philosophy. If Freud suggested that dreams were the royal road to the unconscious.
Then here, action is the royal road.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Words can hide things, they can obfuscate, but actions, those critical choices you make moment to moment, they can't be hidden. They are the purest expression of your inner world.
So the working principle on the stage is what?
It's very direct. Minimum words, maximum action. You have to show us the conflict. You can't just tell us about it. And this is crucial. This must happen within a social context.
Right.
We become ill in relationships, in families, in groups, in societies. So we have to heal within those same relationships. That's why group work is mandatory.
Yeah.
You can't just isolate the individual from the relational field where the problem started.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this is where we get into the unseen forces guiding us. You mentioned 4 interconnected theories that structure this system, but let's focus on the biological engine driving all of this connection, the concept known as Tele.
Yes, Tele. It's the foundation of all interpersonal connection. Think of it as a primal biological wiring system for affinity.
A wiring system.
It's unconscious, and it's functional from the moment of birth. It works much like the lungs or the circulatory system. It's just there. It's the energy that establishes our connection to the world around us.
And it's so important to clarify for you, the listener, this is absolutely not telepathy.
No, not at all. It's not magic.
It's a physical, measurable function that enables affinity and an energetic exchange. And the really profound insight here is that Tele guides every significant choice we make.
Every single one.
It governs who we marry, who we become friends with, which job we accept, even, which seat we decide to take on a bus.
And this guidance, while it's biological, it isn't always easy. It leads to the phenomenon that we call lightning love, the fastest teller relationship.
And what is that?
Tele directs you, often fiercely, toward the person who will force you to face the exact unresolved problem you need to address in your life.
This is the moment we really want you to key in on. This is what explains why people so often find themselves repeating the same problematic partner pattern.
Over and over again.
Right. If you keep choosing people who activate your core issue with, say, abandonment, it's not just bad luck. Tele is pulling you toward the relationship that will shine a spotlight on that fundamental issue.
And you cannot fundamentally redirect your life. You can't change your path until that deep core issue is addressed through a new corrective experience.
Okay, so if Tele is the engine of selection that often keeps us stuck in these repetitive cycles, how do we break them? And this is where it gets really interesting. That brings us to spontaneity, another primary characteristic, just as essential as memory or intelligence.
Spontaneity is the absolute key to liberation. Its function is really twofold. 1, to provide appropriate responses to old situations, so you don't just react to a historical trigger.
You're not on autopilot.
You're not on autopilot. And 2, most importantly, to provide new responses to novel situations. It is the engine of creativity and psychological health.
But this ability, this capacity, it's constantly under siege by something the system calls cultural conservatism, We're conditioned by the world around us.
That's exactly right. Spontaneity is. It's suppressed by cultural conditions. Things like prejudices, internalized pathologies, restrictive societal norms. I mean, think of the well-meaning parent who tells a wildly imaginative child, stop making trouble, or be realistic.
We've all heard that.
We unintentionally kill that capacity for a novel response.
And the consequence of that is severe. When children are born, they have this massive action hunger, a need to translate impulses into movement and experience.
The huge need.
If that action hunger is met, the incident becomes experience. It gets integrated, it's useful. But if that action hunger is continually frustrated,
Then the memory solidifies into trauma or accumulated problems. And that past then begins to weigh on us, and we distance ourselves from our spontaneous adaptive nature.
So the goal then is to cultivate spontaneity, to make sure everything that happens to us is converted into dynamic experience rather than just static trauma.
And that is where the action on the stage becomes revolutionary.
The mechanism here is called symbolic realization. This allows participants to gain a vital memory or experience they were perhaps tragically denied in real life.
Yes, we're talking about creating a scene on the stage, a lived moment, where maybe a person who never reconciled with their father finally gets to say goodbye.
Well, or a young woman gets to sit on her father's lap for the very first time, an interaction she desperately needed but never had.
The power of this is, it's immense. The person experiencing that moment treats that lived experience on the stage as reality. It's not just talking about the past.
No.
It is the corrective action. It facilitates rapid, powerful change. It moves them beyond the wound of the past by replacing it with a new, powerful, lived memory.
So let's widen the aperture now. Tele and spontaneity, they aren't restricted to just one person or two.
No, Tele shapes the very atmosphere of an entire group. And the group's Tele can spontaneously heal an individual within it.
We see this so clearly in that case study of Badohan, the student who was causing chaos in his school.
Exactly. You had this large group of teachers, and they were deeply frustrated, just focusing on his disruptive behavior.
They were just looking at the symptoms.
Just the symptoms. They were analyzing him through the lens of, institutional rules and their own personal annoyance. But when those teachers collectively stepped into the student's context, into his inner world, through a shared action-oriented process, their collective feeling, their shared Tele is shifted. Instantly, they moved from frustration and judgment to this profound compassion and care.
And the remarkable outcome was that when the student, Batuhan, arrived at school shortly after that, he felt it. He sensed this fundamental atmospheric shift. He spontaneously self-corrected. He didn't need a specific counseling session. The entire telefield surrounding him had changed from hostile judgment to accepting care.
And this is conclusive evidence that a change in the collective is instantly mirrored by an adjustment in the surrounding telefield. It causes mutual spontaneous transformation. The individual is affirmed by the collective change, and the collective is relieved by the individual's change.
So what does this all mean? When we expand this thinking, this system can scale up to address global issues through what's known as sociodrama.
Yes, sociodrama applies these same principles of action and relational measurement, what we call sociometry, to address sociosis, the diseased or unwell society.
So if individual problems are neuroses.
Societal problems are sociosis.
And the critique of modern systems here is it's blistering. This is where we confront the core problem that Moreno identified.
Absolutely. We can use sociodrama to address massive societal traumas, like working with pandemic stress by having the virus itself be represented as a role on the stage to understand its message.
Wow.
Or staging confrontations between groups representing nations in conflict. The goal is always to create a shared, spontaneous, lived experience that forces change.
He was truly ahead of his time. He argued that the current economic, political, and sociological structures that we all rely on are, they're fundamentally designed for failure.
Utterly unsustainable.
Yeah.
Because they alienate humans from their nature, from their connection, and from their capacity for spontaneous action.
And this deep inability to accommodate essential human needs is the heart of the critique. It's why this massive transformation is, in his view, inevitable.
He believed these systems, so obsessed with conservation and inertia, would lead to such severe global alienation that they would eventually force humanity back toward a path of genuine connection.
So what we have distilled today is that the quality of your relationships, your capacity for problem solving, and even your repetitive life patterns are all intrinsically governed by these unseen biological processes. Tele guiding your selections, and spontaneity enabling your adaptive responses.
And healing isn't found in just talking about the trauma.
No, it requires the courage to live the corrective action.
And if we acknowledge that Moreno's prophecy about system failure is, well, unfolding right now, we arrive at the profound conclusion that the knowledge of the future is in the present moment. Look around the global platform today, and you're witnessing what he called the final curtain. This major transformation, this necessary turning point, it's unavoidable. It's forcing us back toward connection and authentic, spontaneous living.
A difficult but perhaps an essential journey ahead.
Indeed. Until next time.